Well, anytime you live in a society supposedly based upon law, and it doesn't enforce its own law because the color of a man's skin happens to be wrong, then I say those people are justified to resort to any means necessary to bring about justice where the government can't give them justice.
Charismatic, passionate, controversial. As a member of the Nation of Islam, Malcolm X had preached that whites were devils. But by the time he visited the Midlands in 1965, he'd left that organisation. While he continued to promote self-defence, he rejected racism and segregation. When he was asked why he'd come here to Smethwick, Malcolm X said it was because he'd been disturbed by reports of how non-white people were being treated here. He said he'd heard that they were being treated like the Jews were under Hitler. Steve Page is a filmmaker who produced a documentary about Malcolm's visit to the Black Country.
It was incredibly significant historically because on this street, Marshall Street, Malcolm gave one of his last ever TV interviews before he was assassinated.
And the Negro community makes a mistake when it tries to say we're as good as you are, because they're admitting that you're better. I personally don't endorse that.
A lot of people would be surprised that Malcolm X came here to Smethwick. I mean, why did he come?
I think Smethwick was on the national media agenda at the time. There was an issue with housing and Marshall Street was a flashpoint. There was a policy on the agenda to segregate Smethwick whereby blacks or Asians would not be allowed to purchase or rent houses.
On the street today, his visit is still remembered.
I know he was on this road. I know he was here to, it was a movement, obviously a powerful one, to try and overturn racism in this country or mainly on this street. And obviously it's working because you see it's a multicultural country today, equal rights for everybody.
I was just a nipper. My parents just come from Jamaica. And he was outside the house talking to my old lady.
He spoke to your mum?
Yeah. Well, I can't remember what I was talking about because obviously I was young, but I spoke to my old lady because, as I said, my dad was the first black to buy a house on this road.
Just 9 days after his visit to the Black Country, Malcolm X would be dead, gunned down at a meeting in New York. Elizabeth Glinker, BBC Midlands Today, Smethwick.